You're listening to the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
He's the one with all the power. And guess what? He is personally interested in each one of us. That's the thing that blows my mind. He is personally interested in you and me and is intent on us being with him for all eternity. He's so intent on it, he died on the cross to make sure that we were there, and then he rose from the dead to seal the deal for us. He can't wait for us to be there. I can't wait to be there either. That's his goal.
Does that blow your mind too? When you think about it, it's incredible and amazing. Pastor Ken explains it beautifully today when he says that God, who holds ultimate power, is interested in each one personally. God can't wait for you to be with him in heaven. How awesome is that? And to think that you can access God anytime, anywhere, by simply reaching out to him in prayer. When you call out to him, he runs to be with you. Don't ignore him. Turn to embrace the one who created you and loves you. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Isaiah chapter 14 as he begins his message, Assyria, Philistia, Moab.
We are in Isaiah. We're actually still in chapter 14, but we're going to move to 15 and 16. We're going to be talking about Assyria, actually Babylon still, but Assyria is an add-on. Philistia, and then Moab. And it's the country of Moab. It's not the Air Force's version of the mother of all bombs, okay? I just want to make sure we're clear. These are the oracles against the nations that's in this section from chapter 13 to chapter 24. So some of them are short, some of them aren't, and there's a common theme that we'll see in all of them. But this is Assyria again, verses 24 to 27. And it's not really going to be advertised in the scriptures as here's an oracle. It's an add-on, and we're still in this section on Babylon. So we've dealt with Babylon in the past, Babylon in the future. We've dealt with with Lucifer and all of that combined. And then we all of a sudden get Assyria again, and you're scratching your head and going, what is up with that? The commentators are half and half. Some of them are going like, why? We don't get this. It's out of place. And others go, this is perfect, not a problem. I'm part of that group. This is perfect, not a problem. I mean, everything in God's word is there for a reason. And the placing and everything is there by design, so I have no heartburn with it. So we've been studying this oracle against Babylon. And remember, Babylon is the Mesopotamian power. Babylon also represents the power and glory of the world against God. So Babylon winds up being projected as the city of man, whereas Jerusalem is the city of God. And you get this battle that goes all the way through the scriptures into the book of Revelation. And what we see is that it is God who is going to redeem his people, not Babylon, not Lucifer. And we've already seen the superiority of the Lord to all of that just based on what we've seen so far in chapter 13 and 14. But this superiority, as we've seen, also shows in the defeat of Babylon at the end of the age and the permanent and total destruction of it, because this has been a picture of the world raging against God's people for the last several thousand years, and it hasn't changed. So what we're going to see here in the oracles is a repeating theme. We've already seen it in Babylon, but we're going to see this theme repeat again. We're going to see that what we're thinking is it's dealing with this one country, but then all of a sudden you'll see, wait a minute, it might be dealing with something else. Wait a minute, this is talking about something at the end of the age. Now we're back to this. So what we're going to see is a near-term fulfillment. And remember, in the scriptures, the near-term fulfillment for a prophet validated that that prophet is indeed a prophet of God, which means that when it happens exactly as they say it's going to happen, the far-term portion of it is, you can take it to the bank. It will happen. It absolutely will. It's not unusual. It's a simple demonstration of Yahweh's power. That's it. You know, God is always about showing his power, and he's dealing with a bunch of people who are looking around them in the nations surrounding Israel, and they're going, oh, Baal is the God of power. Marduk's the God of power, and God's basically poking a finger in their eyes, going like, nope, I am. And he goes out of his way to do that. Even Jesus went out of his way to do that, which is a total, we don't have time to get into that, but he did that as well. The near-term event takes place just as prophesied. The far-term event will also take place just as prophesied. But there's more to come, because now in verse 24, we see the prophet switches to discuss, at least to him, the current world power of Assyria, okay? But it's still tied to Babylon. So you sit there and go, what is up with that? He's talking about Babylon, but now he's talking about Assyria. Remember, we identified that one of the titles of the beast is the Assyrian, okay? So you have to keep that in mind as we go into this, because it is tied to Babylon, yet it's also separate. There's a due fulfillment being hinted at. But in verse 24, we get a statement from Yahweh as to the certainty of all prophecy, not just this. And he says this, the Lord of hosts has sworn, saying, surely, just as I've intended, so it has happened, and just as I've planned, so it will stand. Fast forward to the New Testament, and what does Paul say in Philippians 1:6? For I am sure of this very thing, that the one who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. What we see here between the book of Isaiah and what Paul is saying in Philippians is God doesn't leave anything hanging. There are no such thing as loose ends in the economy of God. If he says he's going to do it, he does it. You can take it to the bank. So we know that he's going to fulfill the prophecies. We know he's going to complete his work in us as believers in Jesus Christ, because he doesn't leave anything undone that he says he's going to do. He's intent on achieving everything that he started, including what he's doing in the life of each of us as believers in Jesus Christ. He is intent on doing that. He's already demonstrated that he fulfills prophecy. And since he's the one making the prediction, he's the one capable of fulfilling it. And he's also the one capable of accomplishing in our lives what it is that he started. And sometimes we still are struggling with what that is, but once we determine the direction that God wants us to go, and with Abraham, it was one step at a time. He didn't show him the whole path. He just said, take this next step. He took it, and then God revealed the next step. The thing is if we knew where God was leading us, it'd probably scare us to death, because it would blow our minds with what he's doing. So Isaiah is really not done with this idea yet either. He's going to bring it up again in Isaiah 42, because the Bible is characterized by prophecy. That is one of the key things that is in there, and God points to it as a reason for belief. In chapter 42, verses 8 and 9 of Isaiah, he says, I am the Lord, that's my name. I will not give my glory to another, nor my praise to graven images. Behold, the former things have come to pass. Now I declare new things. Before they spring forth, I proclaim them to you. In other words, he prophesies things that are going to happen before they do, because he's the only one who can do that. He basically, in that section, also challenges, any other gods? Anybody else want to try this? Because nobody else does. He's the only one that does that. So no matter what happens, no matter who's elected, no matter who's on the seat of power, God will always complete what he started. He has got us here at this time, in this place in history, because this is where he wants us to be, because he's got something for each of us to do. Because God will complete what he starts. It says that in Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you're called according to his purpose. He's going to work something out with each of us. With everything that's going on these days, and there's a lot going on these days, and there's uncertainty that goes along with living on planet Earth, Jesus talked about that. Says that they're going to be talking about peace and safety before he returns. That word in the Greek can also be translated peace and certainty, which is very interesting, because that's what they're talking about today. They want certainty. They want to know what's going to be in the future. There's no such thing as certainty. That won't happen. We all look for certainty. We all look for stability, but that won't happen until Jesus Christ comes and takes us to be with him. And that's going to be happening a lot sooner than any of us even think. He is coming real soon. Here in Isaiah 14, Isaiah reminds us of that certainty, and we can absolutely take it to the bank that when God prophesies it, he's going to do it. It will take place. The one who is saying this is the one who is in command of the heavenly hosts, because that's what it says here in that section. It says the God of the heavenly hosts, the one who's in charge of it. It's Yahweh. He commands the armies of heaven. Nobody else does. He's the one who has endless resources. He's the one with all the power. And guess what? He is personally interested in each one of us. That's the thing that blows my mind. He is personally interested in you and me and is intent on us being with him for all eternity. He's so intent on it, he died on the cross to make sure that we were there, and then he rose from the dead to seal the deal for us. He can't wait for us to be there. I can't wait to be there either. That's his goal. Surely, just as I've intended, so it's happened. It's so certain. God has prophesied it, and he uses past tense language over and over again. He considers it already done. It's already a done deal as far as he's concerned. There's no reason for us to be anxious about anything going on around us. We personally know the one who is sitting on the throne of the universe. And because of what Jesus did on the cross, we can actually go right in to the throne room and talk to him. That's amazing, because the high priest couldn't do that except one time a year, and only after a lot of stuff. And they would actually tie a rope to him to make sure that if he didn't have everything done just right, and God slew him, they could drag him out and try again. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20 shows us how close we are to the end of the age. This is Jesus talking to the Laodicean church. That's the church of the last days. We're in the Laodicean church. There is nothing in the way of Jesus Christ right now, returning to take his church out of here. But it says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And when you read that, you say, well, wait a minute. Doesn't it say in Hebrews that he sat down at the right hand of the Father and ever lives to make intercession for us? Yes. But at the end of the age, he's getting ready to come and get us. He's standing at the door, knocking on it to the Laodicean church saying, hey, remember me? I'm the one that died on the cross for you. He says, if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I'll come into him, eat with him, and he with me. But the next voice that we're going to hear is chapter 4 of the book of Revelation, verse 1, come up here. And that's happening real soon. I can't wait. As Yahweh showed us earlier in Isaiah 13, he fully intends to deal with human pride. And we see human pride in Babylon. It is, every time you see Babylon, there's certain images that come up in my mind, and I'm sure come up in your mind as well when we start talking about Babylon. You start thinking about that statue, and then you think about Nebuchadnezzar and a lot of different things. The Babylon of Isaiah's day is the Babylon yet in the future. Currently, that pride that resides in capital cities all over the world. I mean, if you just watch the evening news, you'll see that pride in some of the folks who think they're leaders of this nation. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're talking about, there's pride that's being reflected that is not truly of the Lord. We see a small picture of that pride in Daniel chapter 4. There's a guy by the name of Nebuchadnezzar. He's the ruler of basically Babylon, and he's an absolute ruler. And he had a problem. He had a little pride problem. And in chapter 4, which he wrote, there's a lead up saying that he dreamt something, but he ignores it. So it's a year later. All of this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. After 12 months, he happened to be walking around in the battlements of the royal palace of Babylon. And the king uttered these words, is this not the great Babylon that I have built for a royal residence by my own mighty strength and for my majestic honor? Okay, notice he did it. And it says, while these words were still on the king's lips, a voice came down from heaven. It is hereby announced to you, King Nebuchadnezzar, that your kingdom has been removed from you. You will be driven from human society and you'll live with the wild animals. You'll be fed grass like oxen, and 7 periods of time will pass by for you before you understand that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms and gives them to whomever he wishes. Don't you wish the Lord would do that with certain individuals today? It'd be fun to watch. Now, in that very moment, this pronouncement about Nebuchadnezzar came true. He was driven from human society. He ate grass like oxen. His body became damp with the dew of the sky until his hair became long like an eagle's feathers and his nails like bird's claws. But at the end of the appointed time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up toward heaven. My sanity returned to me, and I extolled the Most High, and I praised and glorified the one who lives forever, for his authority is an everlasting authority, and his kingdom extends from one generation to the next. Nebuchadnezzar got it. We're going to see him there. Now he published that across his entire kingdom. Now, as we've studied, there's a more permanent solution for pride in the works, okay? This is not just for those who motivate fallen man, but those also who follow their own lusts and desires by remaining on the thrones of their lives. And as we see the pride of Babylon dealt with, we'll also have seen the pride of man dealt with. Now, how assured can we be that all of that is going to be taken care of, that Babylon and the pride of man is going to be dealt with? Well, remember Assyria? They've not been dealt with yet, but they will be. Verses 24 and 25, continuing the thought. The Lord of hosts has sworn, saying, surely, just as I've intended, so it's happened, and just as I've planned, so it'll stand, to break Assyria in my land, and I will trample him on my mountains. Then his yoke will be removed from them, and his burden removed from their shoulder. The Yahweh of armies, the Lord of hosts, who's just provided a detailed description of the fall and destruction of the city of man, as well as the fall and destruction of the original rebel of Genesis 3, is letting us know that as outlandish as all of that might have sounded, it's going to happen. And here's why. Because Assyria will be trampled on the mountains of Judah. That's why. And we're talking about the Assyria very near in the future for him. I mean, he's writing this around 730 BC. In 701 BC, they got trampled. But we also know, as we look in the book of Revelation, it'll happen again on his mountains during the Battle of Armageddon. The future, the destiny of Assyria, which is being discussed, is a pledge of the future destiny of Babylon. From this, we see that what has just preceded is not intended to just have a reference contemporary to Isaiah, but it's talking about the future. It's not going to be military might and power that Judah has that's going to solve this problem. It's not going to be the allies of Judah that solve this problem. It's not going to be Egypt. It's not going to be whoever they ally themselves with. It's not going to be mutual aid treaties that do it. It will be the ultimate authority of the universe that's going to do it. Because notice again, Yahweh says, I have intended, I have planned, I will trample him. Not good things if you're the one he's talking about. Judah is not going to have anything to do with it, not one thing. And because of the way it'll happen and where it'll happen, we will know that everything that he has prophesied will happen just as he's prophesied it, and will do so exactly as he's prophesied it. So here's what the imagery is that Yahweh is projecting. Yahweh's plan is to destroy Assyria, talking about the Assyrian Empire. He's going to destroy them. And in order that it might be clear that he's the author of the destruction, it's going to take place in his own land. Now remember, we talked about Jewish cosmology and how there was a belief for the Jew at that time that the God of each nation only was in each nation. Well, they've come in invading into God's turf using the way that they would believe. And God's going to take care of them on his turf. He's going to prove that he is a mighty God. He's basically going to take his finger and poke it in the eye of Marduk and Baal, because that's who they were worshiping. He's going to do it on the hills of Palestine, on the hills of Israel. So we see Yahweh as a warrior. He is the one who is the leader of all of the armies of heaven. And it literally in the Hebrew says he's going to mangle them and then he's going to trample on their prostrate corpses. That's an image for you. And the guy who wrote this wrote it in 1912. So, that he's saying that's the picture that we see. If we look at Isaiah 37, where we see it actually happen, verses 33 to 38. Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria. Now, when we get to there, I'll give you more detail behind what's actually happening historically at this point. He will not come to this city or shoot an arrow there. He'll not come before it with a shield or throw up a siege ramp against it. By the way that he came, by the same he'll return, and he'll not come to this city, declares the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for my own sake and my servant David's sake. Then the angel of the Lord went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when men arose early in the morning, behold, all these were dead. Almost sounds like one of the things that some special forces units do. The Turks were really good at this, and so were the Gurkhas, where they would sneak into a camp at night, go into a tent where there were two men, slice the throat of one, leave the other one alive, and leave. They may have been like that, don't know, but we also know he's going to mangle them and then stomp on their corpses. So, we don't know what exactly they died from, but we don't read anywhere that they packed up and took all these guys with them. They just left. And as a result, Israel took spoil from Assyria. Behold, all of these were dead. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and returned home and lived at Nineveh. And it came about that while he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch, his god, that Adrammelech and Sharezer, his sons, killed him with the sword. Of course they would. He had no more reputation. He had just lost his army to Judah at night. So he was toast in terms of his reputation as a king. Then they escaped to the land of Ararat. In other words, they went north into Turkey. And Esarhaddon, his son, became king in his place. In 701 BC, just as prophesied, Yahweh liberated Judah from Assyria and removed the yoke. Verses 24 to 26 now. We have to I keep bringing that in because we can get the whole thought. The Lord of hosts has sworn, surely, just as I've intended, so it has happened, and just as I planned, so it'll stand, to break Assyria in my land, and I will trample him on my mountains. Then his yoke will be removed from them, and his burden removed from their shoulder. This is the plan devised against the whole earth, and this is the hand that stretched out against all the nations. There's a little more to this plan than just a local empire that's being dealt with. He's going to set the nations free of Assyrian oppression as well. God's purpose is to liberate Jerusalem from the Assyrian siege, but in a wider sense, to liberate all the nations of that day from the Assyrian yoke of oppression, which did happen in 612 BC when Nineveh fell. But this is also pointing to another event when the Assyrian will be destroyed on the hills of Israel at the Battle of Armageddon, setting all the nations free from his oppression. His doing this for the nations concerning Assyria shows that he will do this for the nations concerning Babylon in the future. And as with Babylon having a future component being reflected in the prophecy talking about a deliverance for the world at the end of the age, the message for Assyria reflects the same thing. Per Isaiah 10:24, we learned that is a name of the Antichrist. He's referred to as the Assyrian.
Because you decided to stay tuned, you've just been a part of the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown. Do you know how glad it makes our hearts to know you're investing time in your relationship with Jesus? So much. In fact, would you connect with us and share a little about what's been happening in your life and how this radio ministry has affected you? The UnsafeBible.com has a space for you to do just that. Go to the Connect tab at the side and then click on the Connect card. Once there, fill out the form, and then we'll be sure to touch base with you. Pastor Ken's message from Isaiah today left me reflecting on my own life and how I treat people. Do I treat them how I want to be treated? Do I give them the cold shoulder when I feel like it? Or do I choose kindness over retaliation? Isaiah was one of the major prophets that confronted some of these common issues we still face today. You don't want to miss any of these teachings. Trust me. If you already have, don't sweat it. We have your bases covered. Just go to the unsafebible.com and click on Media. There you'll find this and other messages to listen to. If Go 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 is your middle name and you can't seem to find a still moment, you can follow us via Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'd also like to personally invite you to attend one of our services. Find all the information you need, including directions, at our website. And just in case you've forgotten, it's the unsafebible.com. We hope to meet you soon. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. Come back again for more of the Unsafe Bible.